I'm going to tell you something that I wish I knew 10 years ago, and understanding this singular concept ended my procrastination permanently, and this is the concept of activation energy. Every single task that you ever want to do has something called an activation energy associated with it. This is the effort that you think it will require to get the task done. If this activation energy required for a task is too high, meaning you think it's too difficult to get that task done, then you're most likely going to end up procrastinating it. That's because we as humans have this evolutionary mechanism inside of us to prevent us from wasting large amounts of energy into things. On the other hand, if the activation energy of a task is low, then you are not going to procrastinate it. Think about the task of just waking up and brushing your teeth. It almost feels automated and effortless to perform. So in order to do any task, you have to overcome its activation energy barrier to get that task started. And one way to overcome this activation energy barrier is just by using raw willpower and getting those things done. And this was the approach that I was using for most of my life. Just watch motivational videos, get hyped up, and then be productive for a couple of days. But the problem with this approach is that motivation is a limited resource, and once it runs out, you stop doing those tasks. So this wasn't a very sustainable approach, and it took me decades to learn this. I have now come to understand that the only way to do something consistently in the long term is not by trying to jump higher, but rather by lowering the activation energy barrier to the point that it becomes effortless to do that task. And in the next 2 chapters, I am going to discuss 2 weird ways that help you do just that. Think of 2 scenarios. In scenario 1, we have this person who wakes up and then doesn't really have a plan for this day. So now he begins to think, what should he be doing now? Should he be working out or studying or having breakfast? All of this decision making on the go is actually very psychologically taxing, and this just skyrockets the activation energy of whatever task he's thinking of. And now, because all of these tasks seem hard to start, he ends up procrastinating all of them and just going after cheap dopamine to numb himself. And to be honest with you, this was my reality for most of my life. I wanted to do so much with my free time, but it's like my mind refused to obey me. Now in the second scenario, we have this person who actually notes down the time at which he's going to work out, the time at which he's going to study, the time at which he's going to read, and the time which he's going to have his meals at. He notes down all these things each night before he goes to bed. So now once his alarm rings and he wakes up, he knows exactly what he needs to do and when he needs to do it. He's not making any decisions on the go. He's not debating himself. What this does is that it greatly lowers the activation energy for all the tasks that are listed on the routine. Secondly, after this person has followed this exact routine for the next 10-15 days, then all the items on this routine become part of his identity. They now become even easier to perform because your brain is just so used to firing those specific circuits at those specific times. And this phenomena further lowers the activation energy for all tasks. To me, living my life by a routine proved to be absolutely life-changing. A routine was the reason why I was able to make 300 plus YouTube videos. A routine was the reason why I was able to land software engineering jobs at Fortune 500 companies. So do yourself a favor today and make a simple, basic, not too hard to follow routine for yourself. And for the next 30 days, I want you to actually try and stick to it. Even if you stuck to your routine just 50% of the time, it is significantly better than not having a routine at all and just being at the mercy of your mood and emotions. One of the biggest reasons why I was procrastinating in the past was because I used to try and do too much. If I was working out, I had to give an earth-shattering effort or else it did not count. If I was reading a book, I had to finish the entire book in a week or else I was not really a sophisticated reader. I had all these perfectionist standards for myself, which sounded really cool, but to be honest, they were the biggest reasons why I would procrastinate things and not be consistent at them. Because obviously there are going to be days when you don't feel like working out too hard or following your routine to the T. And if you have this perfectionist all or nothing mindset, then you end up abandoning the task completely and breaking your momentum. And I have lived through this exact loop for years. Now I have made a decision that I would rather be the guy who does things consistently than be the guy who just has bursts of intensity and then makes no progress for the rest of the year. With this new philosophy in mind, now when I have days when I don't really feel like doing things on my routine, then instead of completely abandoning it, I just do those things at much lower intensities. So instead of reading 10 pages that day, I would read 3. Instead of making an entire YouTube video that day, I would just end up designing the thumbnail. What this approach did was made me incredibly consistent and allowed me to preserve that momentum and keep building my identity even on my bad days. And I know this doesn't really sound badass. You won't have the bragging rights of David Goggins because you just did 3 sets of push-ups that day instead of doing your usual workout. But you know what is actually going to sound badass? That you were able to follow a routine for 300 days in a row. Imagine you followed your routine for the next 300 days. Think about how much better you would be at those things. A better martial artist, a better programmer, a better editor, and most importantly, you would kind of respect yourself a bit more because you no longer view yourself as that boy who procrastinated and wasted 5 hours of his day doom scrolling. You are now going to view yourself as a man who keeps his commitments. And as always, if no one has told you this today, I am rooting for you. I hope and pray that you become the kind of man whose presence uplifts the people around him.